Lena took the night shift as a security guard in the half-abandoned office tower because no one else wanted it. The building was 30 stories of glass and concrete standing alone by the highway, all its windows dark after 9 p.m. She sat in the security room on the ground floor, lit only by a desk lamp and the dim glow of the monitors, listening to the hum of the vending machine and the distant rush of cars. Most nights were the same: empty corridors, dark conference rooms, and an occasional cleaning lady pushing her cart. Lena passed the hours scrolling her phone and lazily glancing at the CCTV feeds. On the wall, 12 cameras showed different angles of the building: the elevator hall, the lobby entrance, the underground parking, and a few floors that still had tenants. Nothing ever happened. It was boring, but boring meant safe. Around 2:17 a.m. the monitors glitched. For a full second they turned white with static, then flickered back, but something was wrong. On the feed from the elevator hall on the 14th floor, Lena saw herself. She was standing there in her uniform, alone, facing the elevator doors with her hands at her sides. Lena blinked and looked down at her own hands resting on the desk in the security room. Her reflection on the screen looked nothing like the way she was sitting now. She checked the camera ID again. Elevator hall, floor 14, live feed. She tapped the desk, then waved at the camera in the security room, half expecting the image on the monitor to copy her movement, but it didn't. The Lena on the screen just stared at the elevator doors. Her shoulders were tenser, hair slightly messier, like she had been running. A nervous chill crawled down Lena's spine. Thinking it was a playback, she opened the DVR controls. There was no recording playing, no time slider, no paused icon. The timestamp on the top corner of the screen read 2:27 a.m. Lena squinted. The wall clock in the security room still showed 2:17 a.m. The feed was exactly 10 minutes ahead. She double-checked her phone time, then looked back at the monitor. Future Lena was still waiting in front of the elevator, as if holding her breath. Lena told herself it was a software bug, some weird buffer or desync, but curiosity burned through her fear. If the camera was ahead, she could test it. She grabbed her key card and headed for the elevator, leaving the security room door open behind her. The corridors were dead quiet, lights buzzing faintly in the ceiling. As she rode the elevator up to the 14th floor, she watched the numbers climb, feeling the air grow colder with each floor. The doors opened on the 14th floor. The hallway was exactly like on the monitor. Long, pale walls, gray carpet, a single potted plant by the corner. No one was there. Lena stepped out and stood where she had seen herself on the feed, directly in front of the elevator doors. She checked her watch. 2:21 a.m. On the security room monitor, if it was truly 10 minutes ahead, she should appear here at 2:27 a.m. waiting for something she didn't yet know. She stayed still, listening to the quiet hum of the air conditioning. The silence pressed on her ears. After a minute, the light above the elevator flickered, and Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a notification from the security system. Motion detected in parking level B2. Another camera had triggered. She hesitated, torn between checking the parking alarm and staying to see if the strange vision of herself would become real. She stepped back into the elevator and jabbed the button for parking B2. The car descended with a stomach-dropping lurch. As it sank lower, the lights seemed to grow dimmer, the metallic groan of the cables louder. The doors opened into the underground parking, a cavernous space of concrete pillars and numbered spots. Between the cars, shadows pooled like spilled ink. The motion alert should have come from the far corner, where the security mirror reflected a warped view of the rows. Lena walked between the cars, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The smell of oil and cold concrete filled her nose. There was no one else there, only her footsteps echoing. A plastic bag skittered across the floor when the ventilation kicked in, making her flinch. At the far wall, she found the camera that had triggered the alert. Beneath it, smeared across the concrete in something dark and glistening, were the words, 10 minutes ahead. Her breath hitched. It looked like thick paint, but the color and shine made her think of something far worse. She took a shaky photo with her phone and backed away. The elevator dinged behind her, though she hadn't called it. When she turned, its doors were already open, waiting. Lena checked her watch again. 2:25 a.m. 2 minutes until the time she had seen on the 4th floor feed. 2 minutes until she would be standing in that hallway, according to the monitors. She rode back up, this time feeling every vibration through the cage of the elevator. Maybe, she thought, if she simply refused to stand in that spot again, the future she'd seen would never happen. When the doors opened on the 14th floor, the hallway stretched out before her, perfectly ordinary and perfectly wrong. The building seemed to be holding its breath. Lena stayed inside the elevator, one foot hovering over the line between the car and the carpet. Down in the security room, the monitor showed the future timestamp ticking. 2:27 a.m. On the feed, Lena was already outside the elevator, facing the doors with her back to the camera. On the live floor, she was still inside, refusing to move. Her heart thudded painfully. Then the lights flickered and the elevator's control panel glitched. All the floor numbers blinked at once, and the button for floor 14 began to pulse on its own, even though it was already there. The elevator doors suddenly tried to close, bumping into her shoulder and reopening. An automated voice crackled, repeating, "Doors closing. Doors closing," even as they stayed open in a stuttering loop. Each time they moved, they nudged her a little farther out until she stumbled forward onto the carpet. The moment both of her feet left the elevator, the doors snapped shut behind her with a violent clang. Her watch clicked over to 2:27 a.m. A cold draft rushed down the hallway, though there were no windows. Lina's skin prickled. Slowly, against every instinct, she turned to look at the security camera at the end of the corridor, knowing that somewhere downstairs she was now visible on the future feed exactly as she had seen herself. The elevator light above her head dinged once, then went dark. Behind her, the doors shuttered and began to open again, far too slowly, metal scraping against metal. On the monitor in the security room, the feed from floor 14 showed Lena standing still as the elevator doors opened behind her. Something stepped out, a shape darker than the hallway, tall and wrong, its edges flickering like bad reception. The timestamp rolled to 2:28 a.m. In the real hallway, Lena felt a presence at her back, the air turning heavy and electric, as if someone had draped a wet blanket of static over her shoulders. Whatever she had seen on the screen wasn't the future, it was an appointment. Daniel took the night drive because he needed the quiet. The highway that cut through the countryside was long, empty, and bathed in pale moonlight. His old sedan hummed steadily as the radio whispered static. Fields stretched endlessly on both sides, silent and unbroken. It was supposed to be a peaceful trip, just him, the road, and a few hours of solitude. Around 1 a.m., Daniel noticed the first odd thing, a reflective road sign that stood alone in the grass. He slowed down to read it. The sign simply said, "Return ahead." He frowned. He had driven this highway too many times to count, and he knew it didn't have any signs like that. He chalked it up to construction work and kept driving. 10 minutes later, he saw the sign again. Same height, same angle, same lettering, "Return ahead." Daniel felt a small pinch of unease in his stomach. Maybe he had zoned out and looped around without noticing a turn, but the highway had been straight for miles. He checked his GPS. It showed nothing but black from the weak signal, a loading icon spinning endlessly. He drove another 5 minutes. The radio crackled, then briefly went silent before erupting with a distorted, stretched-out voice he couldn't understand. Daniel flinched and turned the dial, but it didn't change anything. Behind the static, a faint pattern repeated like someone breathing too close to the microphone. When Daniel looked back at the road, his breath caught in his throat. The sign was there again, "Return ahead," and this time it was accompanied by another sign just beneath it. The second sign looked much older, rust-eaten, and bent. It read, "Stop ignoring IT." Daniel's hands tightened around the steering wheel. He pressed harder on the gas, determined to outrun whatever trick his mind or the highway was playing. But the road ahead stretched out in perfect uniformity, each line of paint and roadside marker identical to the last. The world felt like it had stopped progressing, as if the highway was a looped video. He glanced at the odometer. It hadn't changed in the last 5 minutes. Confused, Daniel tapped it with his knuckle. Nothing. The numbers stayed frozen. He tried braking gently to feel the speed shift. His body reacted with the inertia of slowing, but the odometer still insisted he was going the exact same speed. Up ahead, something new appeared. A small roadside rest stop he had never seen before. A single picnic table, a vending machine with a flickering light, and a payphone booth standing crooked like it was tired. Daniel pulled in, headlights washing over the cracked pavement. The place felt abandoned for decades. He stepped out of the car, the cold night air biting at his skin. The payphone receiver hung off the hook, swaying slightly even though no wind blew. Out of curiosity or maybe desperation, Daniel lifted it. There was no dial tone, just soft breathing. Human breathing. When he said hello, the breathing paused, and then a whisper slid through the line. "You passed me already." Daniel slammed the receiver back and hurried to his car, heart pounding. He drove off without looking back. The moment he got back onto the road, the radio hissed again. This time, the static aligned into words like an automated broadcast. The voice said, 2 minutes behind. "Please accelerate." The temperature inside the car dropped sharply. His breath fogged the windshield. Daniel tried turning up the heater, but the nod spun freely without changing anything. Something scraped the underside of the vehicle, metal on metal. He checked the rearview mirror and saw nothing but blackness, deeper and denser than the night should allow. Suddenly, headlights appeared behind him, two pale circles in the darkness, gaining fast. Daniel swallowed hard. He hadn't seen another car in over an hour. As they approached, the lights flickered unnaturally, stuttering as if the approaching vehicle were skipping frames. He pressed the accelerator, but the car barely responded. The chasing car drew close enough for Daniel to see its outline. It was the same model as his. Same dents. Same missing hubcap. Same cracked left taillight. Daniel's blood ran cold. It was his car, or rather, a version of it mirroring every detail perfectly. A silhouette sat in the driver's seat, but its head was tilted too far to one side, as if broken. Panicking, he swerved into the breakdown lane, but the pursuing car instantly matched the movement. Daniel's vision blurred as adrenaline surged. Finally, he slammed the brakes. The pursuing vehicle shot past him and vanished. Not sped away, not turned, simply vanished, like a frame that had been deleted. Daniel sat frozen in silence until his pulse stopped pounding in his ears. When he looked up, his headlights illuminated yet another road sign only a few meters ahead. This one was smashed, bent nearly in half, and the wording was scratched off except for a few letters, "Turn Bay." He drove past it slowly, his stomach twisting. Something new appeared on the horizon, a motel. Its neon sign buzzed erratically, flickering between vacancy and VANCY. The entire building seemed to pulse, lights dimming in a slow, unnatural rhythm. Daniel couldn't recall ever seeing a motel on this stretch of road. He parked and stepped inside the lobby. The smell of mold and old carpet hit him immediately. A bell sat on the counter, dusty and untouched. Behind the desk, a wall of room keys hung perfectly arranged. As Daniel approached, the keys began to sway gently, though his footsteps made no breeze. On the counter lay a guest book. Its most recent entry was dated 5 years earlier. The name written in shaky handwriting caught his eye, Daniel R. Miller. His exact name, his hometown, even his signature, down to the looping R he always made. But he had never been here before. Not once. He staggered back, knocking the bell off the counter. It clanged sharply, echoing too long. Then the lobby lights turned off all at once. Darkness swallowed everything. In the pitch black, he heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, matching his own shoe pattern. They approached from the hallway leading to the rooms. Daniel bolted outside and jumped into his car. He sped back onto the highway, heart hammering. The moment his tires touched the asphalt, the radio broadcast returned. 9 minutes behind, it said calmly, "Please increase speed to maintain alignment." Daniel screamed at the radio to shut up. Up ahead, the road dipped down into a valley shrouded in fog. As Daniel entered it, the world around him warped. The lines on the road curved subtly upward, like he was driving through a distorted lens. He blinked hard, but the warping intensified, making the road ripple like water. On the far end of the valley, he saw something that made his blood freeze. Another Daniel, standing in the middle of the road, facing away from him. Same clothes, same hair, same posture. The other Daniel turned his head just slightly, not enough to reveal his face, but enough to acknowledge the approaching car. Daniel slammed the brakes and swerved, narrowly avoiding the figure. The car spun, tires screeching, until it came to a stop facing the opposite direction. When he looked back, the second Daniel was gone. Not even footprints remained on the asphalt. He tried to accelerate away, but the car refused to move forward. The wheels spun uselessly, as though the road were holding him in place. Panic rising, Daniel shifted into reverse. The car lurched backward smoothly. He reversed for nearly a minute until something horrifying came into view, his own taillights flickering weakly. Two identical cars facing each other. Daniel stepped out cautiously, shaking. The other car's engine was running. Its driver door hung open. He approached slowly, every instinct telling him not to look inside, but he forced himself to. Inside the driver's seat sat a version of Daniel slumped over the wheel. Pale, still, lifeless. Daniel stumbled back, gagging. As he turned, he realized the highway around him was dissolving into static patches of reality, blinking into white fuzz like a broken video file. The radio inside his car spoke one final time, calmly, almost kindly. Alignment complete. Please proceed to your position. Maya moved into the old apartment building because it was cheap and close to her night shift job. The place was ugly in a familiar way, yellowed walls, buzzing ceiling lights, peeling elevator stickers, but at least it was quiet. On the first night, she unpacked the essentials, plugged in her small flat-screen TV, and let it play background noise while she settled in. The building's antenna clearly wasn't great. Most channels came in fuzzy, sound warbling in and out. Maya flipped through static and old reruns until she landed on local news, half listening as she folded clothes. When she eventually reached for the remote again, something strange appeared on the channel list, an entry labeled simply 13, with no logo or description. She didn't remember seeing channel 13 during the setup scan, but curiosity won. She pressed the button. The screen went black for a moment. Then a grainy image faded in, a live view of a hallway that looked almost exactly like the one outside her apartment. Same paint, same flickering light at the far end, same crooked fire extinguisher cabinet. I frowned and muted the TV. On channel 13, the hallway stayed perfectly still. No movement, no sound, just low hiss from the speakers. She turned her head toward her real door, listening. Not the TV hallway and the real hallway felt like mirrors, but not synchronized ones. Proved to herself it was just some generic building footage. She opened her front door and stepped into the corridor. It was empty. She waved at the ceiling camera out of habit. Back inside, she checked the TV. The hallway on channel 13 showed nothing. No sign of her wave. The angle was the same, but she was missing from the feed. A prickling unease slid down her neck. Maybe it wasn't live, she thought. Maybe it was some old recording. She checked the on-screen info. No program name, no schedule, no timestamp. Just a tiny icon in the corner, a red dot usually used to indicate live recording. Pulsing slowly, she left the TV on channel 13 while she got ready for work, using the hallway feed like a paranoid doorbell camera. Every so often, the screen would glitch into thick static for a fraction of a second, then snap back. Each time it resumed, something minor had changed: a door slightly more ajar, a shadow a little longer, a new smudge on the wall. At one point, during a longer glitch, the static held a shape. A tall, dark outline stood at the far end of the hallway, where the light flickered most. When the picture cleared, the hallway was empty again, but the overhead light at that end had burnt out completely, leaving a long stretch of darkness. Maya almost laughed it off. Old wiring, bad reception, coincidence. Still, when she left for her shift, she double-checked the peephole, the lock, and the bolt. In the elevator, she caught a glimpse of herself in the scratched metal walls, looking more tired and anxious than she wanted to admit. It was just a building, just a weird channel. That was all. When she came home at 3 a.m. exhausted and smelling of coffee, the TV was still on even though she was sure she'd turned it off. The screen glowed with channel 13 hallway view. Her heart dropped. The door directly opposite her stood wide open on the feed. In reality, when she peeked through the peephole, the opposite door was firmly closed. She muted the sound, but the hiss continued, faint and distant, as if coming from somewhere else in the room. Channel 13 zoomed slowly toward the open doorway across from her own, the grain wobbling with each digital step. The inside of the other apartment was swallowed in blackness, but there was a sense of depth, like looking into a tunnel. Maya's phone vibrated on the table, making her jump. A notification popped up from a building residence chat she'd reluctantly joined earlier that day. Someone on the third floor had written, "Anyone else hearing a TV that never turns off? Like someone's watching static all night?" The timestamp said 2:47 a.m. just minutes earlier. She typed a response with trembling fingers but ultimately erased it. What was she going to say? That her TV was showing a hallway she wasn't in, with doors open that weren't open. Instead, Maya switched the set off, this time watching it go black. Then she unplugged it from the wall entirely. The hiss finally stopped. She slept badly, dreams flickering between channels that never fully loaded. In every dream, she stood in the hallway outside her door, but the perspective was always wrong, like she was watching herself from a ceiling corner. In the last dream before waking, something tall and thin rounded the corner toward her, its face replaced by static. Next night, after another long shift, Maya walked back up the stairs instead of using the elevator. The building's silence felt heavier now, as if it were listening. At her floor, she paused. The actual hallway seemed exactly like the one on channel 13, the same scuffs on the walls, the same burnt-out bulb at the far end. Her gaze lingered on the opposite apartment door. It was numbered 13. She hadn't noticed that before. Her own door was 12. Opposite was 13. Further down, toward the fire exit, the numbers jumped to 15. There was no 14. A missing floor number made sense in some buildings, but a missing room number felt like a mistake, or like something had been erased. Inside her unit, she decided to test something. She plugged the TV back in, turned it on, and ran a channel scan from scratch. The setup interface crawled through numbers 1, 2, 3, 12, 14, 15. It finished with a cheerful beep. Channel 13 wasn't listed, but when she pressed the channel down button from 14, the TV jumped to 13 anyway. Channel 13 came back without static this time. The image was sharper, darker, more defined. It showed the hallway again, but now the camera angle was lower, almost at eye level and closer to her door. Her own doormat was clearly visible, with the crooked welcome text she'd barely glanced at when moving in. A faint knocking sound echoed through the speakers. A moment later, someone knocked on her actual door. 3 slow, hollow knocks. Maya froze. Her eyes flicked between the TV and the door, afraid that opening it would make the image change. On Channel 13, nothing moved. No one stood outside her apartment. The hallway looked dead and empty. The knocking came again, a little louder. She crept to the peephole and looked out. The corridor was empty. There was no one outside. The burnt bulb at the far end made the darkness past it look almost liquid. When she stepped back, the TV feed finally changed. A shape appeared at the far edge of the frame, a long-limbed figure, too thin, standing just beyond the burnt-out light, face lost in shadow. The figure didn't move closer, but the camera seemed to, zooming in with an awkward mechanical jerk. With each cut, the grain deepened, and the outline became clearer, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, arms hanging a bit too long. Maya grabbed the remote and hammered the power button. The TV screen flickered, but instead of shutting off, it flashed between different angles of the same hallway. One angle showed the hallway from the opposite direction, looking straight at her door. Another showed the ceiling, staring down like an eye. A third showed a close-up of the door number 13, the brass digits vibrating slightly as if something were pounding from the other side, just too quietly to hear. Her phone buzzed again, nearly falling off the coffee table. A new message in the residence chat. To whoever lives across from 13, please stop opening and closing your door in the middle of the night. It's been banging for an hour. The message was sent 5 minutes earlier. Maya stared at her own door. She hadn't touched it since coming home. Channel 13 abruptly cut to black. For a few seconds, there was only darkness and the low hiss. Then a new image faded in grainy, handheld footage of the inside of someone's apartment. All the angles were wrong, corners stretched wide like a fisheye lens. Maya recognized her own sofa, her own table, her own half-unpacked boxes. The camera was inside her unit. The camera in the feed turned slowly, as if held by invisible hands. It lingered on the front door from the inside, then on the back of the television set, then on the mirror mounted near the hallway. In the mirror's warped reflection, Maya thought she saw someone standing behind the camera, tall, thin, head tilted. But where the face should be, the reflection was just white noise. Maya backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. The air in the room grew heavy and stale. The actual TV screen on her wall showed her living room with a slight delay, like a bad online stream. She lifted her hand. The version of her on screen lifted her hand a fraction of a second later. Between the frames, for a glitching instant, something else stood where she had been, taller and wrong. She ran to the plug and yanked it out of the socket. The screen went black. The hiss stopped. For the first time in days, silence reclaimed the apartment. Maya's breath came in ragged pulls. She carried the TV carefully, almost reverently, to the hallway, set it down next to the trash chute, and left it there, screen facing the wall. At night, she tried to sleep without any electronics on. No radio, no TV, no phone notifications. The building groaned and settled around her. At some point in the thinning hours before dawn, she was woken by a faint, familiar sound, the soft hiss of untuned static. It wasn't coming from her apartment. It was seeping softly under her front door, as if from a TV left on in the hallway. Heart pounding, she crept to the door and pressed her ear against it. The static grew louder, mixed with a low, almost conversational murmur just beyond the wood. She looked through the peephole. Whoever had taken the TV hadn't moved it far. It now sat directly in front of her door, screen turned toward her, glowing softly. Channel 13 showed the inside of her apartment, her eye at the peephole, staring back. Echo stories, when stories whisper through the dark.